Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's funny. We talk about all sorts of financial scenarios on this show, but there's one question that pops up all the time, like way more than you'd think.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
It's that classic dilemma. You come into some extra cash, a little windfall, and suddenly it's decision time. Invest it or pay down the mortgage.
Yeah, it's like a universal financial puzzle, isn't it? I mean, everyone dreams of finding themselves in that position, right? But then the real work begins.
Totally, and that's what we're diving deep into today. We've got a whole stack of research here from financial experts, market analysts, and even some interesting stuff on the psychology of money.
Oh yeah, the psychology piece is huge because, let's be real, these decisions aren't just about spreadsheets and interest rates. It gets emotional.
So true. I mean, everyone's got their own relationship with debt, and the idea of owning your home outright, it just hits different for some people. It really does.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to acknowledge right off the bat. Before we even think about investing or mortgage paydown, you've got to take stock of your own financial situation and not just the numbers.
So, what do you mean by that? Besides just knowing, how much debt you have and what your interest rates are?
It's about figuring out what you want your money to do for you. Like, what are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
Are you all about stability and peace of mind? Or are you chasing those high returns, even if it comes with some risk?
And it's not just about personality either, right? Like, your current situation matters too, right? Like, do you have other high interest debt? What's your debt to income ratio look like?
All those things are crucial homework. And honestly, sometimes even before you think about this windfall, it's good to get a handle on those basics.
That makes sense. So let's assume someone's done that homework and they're thinking, okay, mortgage paydown is appealing. What are some of the things they might be missing about their current mortgage that they need to dig into?
It's so easy to fixate on that monthly payment, right? But trust me, there's a whole world of details hiding in those mortgage agreements that can make a huge difference.
Okay, spill the tea. What kind of sneaky details are we talking about?
Have you ever heard of prepayment penalties?
Prepayment penalties. Maybe, but I definitely can't explain it off the top of my head.
Imagine this. You come into some money, feeling all proud, and you decide, boom, I'm going to pay down a big chunk of this mortgage, and then bam, the lender hits you with a fee for paying too much too soon.
Wait, seriously, that doesn't seem fair at all. Why would lenders do that?
It's all about protecting their bottom line, their expected interest income. It's a prime example of why you can't just look at the interest rate on your mortgage in isolation.
Right. So it's not just the interest rate. We've got to be on the lookout for these prepayment penalties. What else?
Think about how much time is left on your loan. And here's a curveball. Have you considered whether refinancing is even an option?
Whoa, refinancing. That's a whole other beast. I mean, I know it's a thing, but why would that matter in this invest versus pay down the mortgage decision?
Well, let's say you got your mortgage, I don't know, maybe a few years back when interest rates were sky high, right? Now imagine those rates have dropped significantly since then. Refinancing lets you swap out that old high-interest mortgage for a shiny new one with a lower rate, potentially saving you a ton of money over the life of the loan.
So refinancing is like hitting the reset button on your mortgage. Lower monthly payments, and you're saving money on interest in the long run. That's pretty cool, actually.
Sometimes the smartest move isn't immediately jumping into the invest or pay down debate, but optimizing your current financial picture first.
My brain is already spinning with possibilities, but I know a lot of people, they get really excited about that potential for growth through investments. I mean, making that money grow investments. Making that money grow, that's exciting.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll definitely get into the juicy details of the investment side of things. But first,
there's more homework, isn't there?
Maybe a little. The investment world can be overwhelming, right? Stocks, bonds, crypto, it's a lot. So before you dive into specific options, it helps to think about your investing style. Are you more set it and forget it, or do you like being actively involved in managing your investments?
So chill versus hands-on. What's the official lingo for those approaches?
Passive versus active investing. Passive is all about low maintenance, long-term growth. Think index funds, ETFs, things that don't require constant monitoring.
Okay, so that's passive. And active is more like, what? Picking individual stocks, trying to time the market? Sounds a bit more intense.
Spot on. Active investing takes more time, knowledge, and honestly a higher risk tolerance. Yeah, there's potential for bigger wins, but it also demands a deeper understanding of how the markets work.
I like this. So it's like passive investing is your reliable friend who's always there for you, and active investing is the friend who takes you on those wild adventures, but maybe gets you into some trouble sometimes.
That's a great analogy. Both have their place, and the right one for you depends on your goals, risk tolerance, and how much time and energy you want to invest, pun intended.
This is already giving me a lot to think about. But I gotta ask, when it comes to that final decision, invest or pay down the mortgage, are we just talking numbers here? Or is there more to it?
Numbers are important, for sure. But like we said earlier, the psychology of money plays a huge role too. A lot of people, they find the idea of wiping out their mortgage debt, just owning their home outright, it's incredibly appealing, even if it might not be the most mathematically optimal choice.
Yeah, I get that. There's this feeling of freedom, no more monthly payments, just pure ownership. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to miss out on potentially bigger gains from investing. How do we balance those two things?
That's where it gets really interesting, is this classic tug of war between logic and emotion, the satisfaction of being debt-free versus that potential for growth through investments.
And you're saying there's no easy answer, it's different for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It depends on your individual circumstances, your goals, and how you personally feel about risk. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. We'll dive into the arguments for both sides so you can start to figure out which one really resonates with you. It all comes down to what gives you that peace of mind, that sense of, being in control.
Okay, so let's unpack that case for paying down the mortgage first. I mean, we talked about the emotional side of it, that feeling of security, of owning your home outright. But what about the financial argument? Is there a strong case to be made there as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Every dollar that you put toward your mortgage principal is like a guaranteed return, right? You're reducing the amount of interest you'll pay over the life of the loan. And that's like a sure thing,
Right.
So it's like a guaranteed return as opposed to like the potential return you might get from investing. Exactly. And for a lot of people, that certainty is really appealing, especially if you're someone who's a little, risk averse. Plus, remember that whole compound interest thing we talked about earlier? Well, it works both ways, With debt, it works against you. But when you're paying down principal, it's like it's working for you. Every extra payment you make is like accelerating the process of chipping away at that debt.
So it's not just about getting rid of that monthly payment, it's actually reducing the total cost of the loan over time.
Exactly. And it can be a significant amount of money, especially if you have a large mortgage or high interest rate.
Okay, I'm seeing the appeal here,
Yeah.
but let's play devil's advocate for a second, There are people out there who say that, paying down a mortgage is like leaving money on the table. Wouldn't you potentially earn more by investing that money in the market, especially if you're thinking long term?
That's a totally valid point, and it's something we need to consider seriously. Historically, the stock market has outperformed mortgage interest rates over those long periods. So if you've got a long time horizon and you're comfortable with a bit more risk, investing could offer you a greater potential for building wealth.
It's that classic risk versus reward scenario, right? Like paying down the mortgage, you've got a lower but guaranteed return. With investing, there's more risk involved, but there's also the potential for a much higher payoff.
Exactly. And there isn't a universal right or wrong answer. It really all boils down to your individual circumstances, your goals, and how you feel about risk.
This is reminding me of something you said earlier about how market conditions can actually play a big role in this whole decision. Can we unpack that a bit? How do things like interest rates and market trends, how do they actually factor into the equation here?
Oh, they're super important. I mean, take interest rates, for example. If interest rates are rising, paying down your mortgage becomes more appealing, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially, you're locking in a lower rate on the portion of your mortgage that you're eliminating.
So it's like, staying ahead of the curve before those rates climb even higher.
Precisely. On the other hand, if interest rates are really low, investing might seem more attractive because your money has the potential to grow faster than the interest that you're paying on your mortgage, right?
Right, makes sense. What about the stock market itself? How does the overall market performance, how does that play into this decision?
Well, if the stock market is doing really well, it's in a bull market, prices are generally rising, you might feel more confident about investing because there's a higher probability of good returns.
Well, what if it's like a bear market, a downturn where prices are falling? Would that make you lean towards paying down the mortgage instead?
I mean, it's understandable to feel a little more cautious during a bear market, right? But you got to remember that investing is a long game. Market fluctuations, they're totally normal, and trying to time those ups and downs is like nearly impossible.
So even if the market is like a little bit shaky, it doesn't necessarily mean that I should abandon like my investment strategy altogether.
Not at all. In fact, market downturns, they can create buying opportunities for people who have a long-term perspective. When prices are lower, you can buy more shares for your money, which can actually pay off big time when the market eventually recovers.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So it's about staying focused on that long game, even when things get, a little turbulent in the short term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to, the importance of diversification, which we talked about before. Remember that.
Okay, diversification. Remind me why that's so crucial in all this.
Diversification. It's like your financial safety net, right? Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you're spreading your investments across, different asset classes.
Yeah.
Stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even a little bit of gold or other commodities.
So if like one investment is not doing so well, others might be doing great, and that kind of balances out the whole portfolio.
Exactly. Diversification helps to like mitigate your risk and just smooth out the bumps along the way. It's like a core principle of sound investing, whether you're choosing to invest in the market or even in paying down your mortgage.
Okay, this is all starting to feel like a lot less overwhelming. We've got interest rates, market trends, diversification, and then we've got that emotional side of things too. But I'm curious, are there any other external factors that might influence this decision, things that we might not even think about at first?
There are always more layers to peel back, right? And that's what makes personal finance so interesting. One thing that comes to mind is the real estate market in your area. Like, if property values are just, skyrocketing, it might be tempting to invest in real estate instead of just focusing solely on paying down your existing mortgage.
So, like, becoming a landlord or flipping houses, that kind of thing could actually be a good alternative.
It could be. But it's important to approach it with a clear understanding of, the risks and the responsibilities that are involved. Real estate investing can be pretty complex, and it's definitely not for everyone. But if you're comfortable with the risks and you have like the time and the resources to manage properties, yeah, it can definitely be a great way to build wealth.
Okay, so we've got to consider the real estate market too. But what about like the opposite scenario? What if the real estate market in my area is like stagnant or even declining? Does that make paying down the mortgage, a more attractive option?
It could, yeah. I mean, if you're in a market where property values are going down, focusing on building equity in your current home by, diligently paying down your mortgage might actually be a more stable strategy.
Wow, there are so many angles to consider here. It really is like a financial chess game where like every move has these potential consequences and opportunities. But before we get too caught up in all the strategy stuff, I want to come back to the emotional side of things for a minute. We've talked about the psychological like benefits of being debt-free, but you mentioned earlier that there could be some emotional downsides to debt as well. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, debt can be a huge source of stress and anxiety for a lot of people, right? It could feel like this heavy weight that's just dragging you down, making it hard to enjoy the present moment and even plan for the future.
It's like that feeling of constantly playing catch up and never quite getting ahead.
Exactly. And that kind of chronic stress, it can have like ripple effects throughout your life, impacting your relationships, your work, even your physical health,
So it's not just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's actually about the impact that debt has on our like overall well-being.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to like acknowledge those emotions and find some healthy ways to cope with them. If you're struggling with like debt-related stress, talking to a financial therapist or a counselor can be incredibly helpful.
So it's about addressing both like the financial and the emotional aspects of debt.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, the same goes for investing too. It's not just about maximizing those returns. It's about making choices that align with, your values and your overall vision for the future.
Okay, I'm definitely feeling like way more self-aware now after all of this. But let's shift gears back to the practical side for a sec, We've talked about all these external factors that can influence our decision, but what about like our own internal landscape? How do our personal financial goals play into all of this?
That's a fantastic question. Your financial goals are like the compass that guides your whole financial journey, right? Before you make any big decisions, it's crucial to take a step back and just clarify what you're really working towards.
So like, do I want to retire early, buy a bigger house, travel the world, start my own business? I mean, those are all totally different goals that would require very different financial strategies.
Exactly. Once you have a clear understanding of what your goals are, you can start to develop a plan that aligns with them. And that plan might involve, a combination of paying down debt, investing, saving, spending, all of that.
So it's all about finding that right mix, that balance for your individual circumstances.
Precisely. And remember, your plan isn't like set in stone. It should evolve as your life changes, as your goals change, as the market changes, all of that.
Okay, that takes some of the pressure off. It's not about getting it perfect right away. It's about having a plan that you can adjust along the way. But I'm curious, are there any specific types of goals that might make paying down the mortgage, a more appealing option?
Absolutely. Like if your primary goal is to achieve financial freedom and reduce stress, paying down your mortgage can be such a powerful way to do that. Gives you that sense of security and stability, knowing that you own your home outright.
That makes a lot of sense. What about goals that might favor investing instead?
If your main focus is building wealth over the long term, investing in the market can offer a much greater potential for growth, especially if you have a longer time horizon. Like if you're saving for retirement, the power of compounding can really work its magic.
So the time horizon is a key factor here.
Oh, absolutely. The longer you have to invest, the more time your money has to grow, and the more risk you can potentially afford to take.
Okay, so we've got our compass, our financial goals. But are there any other internal factors we need to be thinking about? Things about ourselves that might influence this decision?
One of the most important is your risk tolerance. How comfortable are you with the possibility of, maybe losing money in the short term in exchange for those potential gains in the long run?
That's a really good point. I mean, some people, they're totally fine with riding out the ups and downs of the market, while others, they just find it incredibly stressful, right?
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer here, It's all about understanding what your personal comfort level is when it comes to risk. If you're someone who lies awake at night worrying about their investments, a more conservative approach might be a better fit for you.
So it's about being honest with ourselves about how much risk we're truly okay with.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure where you fall on that whole risk tolerance spectrum, there are tons of online questionnaires and assessments that can help you figure out your own kind of investment personality.
Ooh, I love that. It's like taking a personality test for your money. But what if even after all this soul searching and analysis, I'm still feeling stuck? What if I just can't decide which path is right for me?
It's totally normal to feel overwhelmed by this decision. I mean, there's so many factors to consider, and it can be tough to weigh them all effectively. But the good news is you don't have to go it alone.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this. You're going to tell me about seeking professional help.
Rhett, you read my mind. Sometimes the best investment you can make is actually investing in, getting guidance from a qualified financial advisor. They can help you really assess your individual situation, clarify your goals, and develop a plan that's customized to your needs and your values.
It's like having a financial coach in your corner, right? Someone who can provide that objective advice and help you make the most informed decision.
Exactly. And a good financial advisor will also take the time to really understand your emotional relationship with money and address any anxieties or fears you might have.
So it's not just about crunching numbers and building spreadsheets. It's about finding someone who understands the human side of finance.
Yes, 100%. And while we're talking about seeking help, there's another professional who can be incredibly valuable, a tax advisor.
Oh, right. Taxes. We can't forget about Uncle Sam. But how do taxes fit into this whole invest versus pay down the mortgage dilemma?
They can have a huge impact on your overall financial picture. For example, mortgage interest is often tax deductible, which can reduce your overall tax burden. But investment income, that might be taxed differently, depending on the type of investments you choose and how long you hold them.
So we need to factor in the potential tax implications of each option.
Absolutely. A good tax advisor can help you navigate all the complexities of the tax code and make sure you're optimizing your strategy, whether you choose to invest or pay down the mortgage.
Okay, so we've got our financial advisor to help create a plan, our tax advisor to make sure we're being tax savvy. What other resources are out there that might be helpful?
Oh, there are tons of amazing resources available. From online calculators that can help you compare the cost and benefits of different options to financial planning apps that can track your spending and your investments, technology has made it so much easier to manage your money effectively.
It's like having a whole suite of financial tools right at our fingertips, right?
Exactly. And don't forget about the power of community too. There are online forums, social media groups, and even in-person meetups where you can connect with other people who are, navigating similar financial decisions. Sharing experiences and learning from others can be so valuable.
So it's like finding your financial tribe, right? People who understand what you're going through and can offer support and encouragement.
Exactly. And remember, the most important resource you have is your own knowledge and your own intuition. The more you learn about personal finance, the more confident you'll feel about making, those sound decisions.
So it's about empowering ourselves with knowledge and connecting with others who are on a similar path.
Absolutely. Financial literacy, it's a journey, not a destination. There's always something new to learn, new strategies to explore, and new ways to, grow your wealth.
This has been so insightful. I mean, we've really covered a lot of ground. Analyzing those pros and cons of investing versus paying down the mortgage, exploring market conditions, personal financial goals, risk tolerance, even the emotional side of money. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to this idea of seeking professional help. Can you give us any specific advice on how to find the right financial advisor or tax advisor? There are so many out there. It's kind of hard to know where to even start.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, not all financial professionals are created equal. It's super important to do your research and find someone who's a good fit for you. Look for advisors who are certified financial planners or CFPs. That means they've met some pretty rigorous education and experience requirements.
So CFP is like the gold standard.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for referrals from, friends, family members, colleagues who've had positive experiences with financial advisors. Word of mouth is still a super powerful tool.
Makes sense. So we've got our CFP checklist, and we're reaching out to our network for referrals. What else should we be looking for when we're actually interviewing these potential advisors?
Pay attention to their communication style. Do they explain things clearly? Do they actually listen to your concerns and goals? Do you feel comfortable, asking them questions?
So it's about finding someone who you can actually build rapport with, someone you trust and feel good about working with.
Absolutely. You're entrusting this person with your financial well-being, so it's essential to find someone that you click with, on a personal level.
Okay, I'm feeling much more confident about navigating the whole world of financial professionals now. But is there anything else that we should be asking, potential advisors during those initial interviews?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always ask at their fees and how they're compensated. Some advisors charge a flat fee, while others work on commission. It's important to understand how they make money and how that might influence the advice that they give you.
So transparency is key. We want to know exactly what we're paying for and how our advisor is incentivized.
Precisely. And don't hesitate to ask about their investment philosophy. Do they take a conservative approach? A more aggressive approach? Do they specialize in certain types of investments? Make sure their philosophy actually aligns with your own risk tolerance and your goals.
So it's kind of like finding the right doctor or therapist, right? You need to make sure their approach is a good match for your needs.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to, shop around and interview multiple advisors before you make a decision. Finding the right financial professional is an investment in itself, so it's worth taking the time to find the perfect fit.
Okay, I'm feeling a lot more empowered now. I mean, we've talked about the nitty-gritty of mortgages and investments, the emotional side of money, market conditions, personal goals, risk tolerance, and even how to find the right professional help. But I think it's time to bring it all together. Let's focus on that final decision, invest or pay down the mortgage.
You're right. We have covered a lot of ground today, and I'm sure our listeners are ready to hear how all this translates into making that final call.
So after all this discussion, do we have a definite answer? Is there a magic formula for deciding whether to invest or pay down the mortgage?
We've definitely thrown a lot of information your way today, but remember, the ultimate decision is yours. There's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on what makes the most sense for your unique situation.
So it's not about following some rigid formula. It's about considering all the factors we've discussed and making an informed choice.
Exactly. Think about your financial goals, your risk tolerance, your time horizon, and, how each option aligns with your values and your priorities.
So it's about finding the right balance for me, not what works for everyone else.
Exactly. And remember, even if you decide to pay down the mortgage now, it doesn't mean you can't dip your toes into investing later on, or vice versa, right? Your financial journey is ongoing, and there's always room to adjust your strategy as you go.
Okay, I'm feeling a lot more confident about making this decision now. I mean, we've covered so much today, from the the very specific details of mortgages and investments to those emotional and psychological factors that can, influence our choices. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. What's the most important takeaway from our deep dive today?
I'd say the most important takeaway is this. Personal finance. It's personal. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about finding what aligns with your values, your goals, and your unique circumstances.
So it's about taking ownership of our own financial lives and making choices that feel right for us, not what, society or our friends or our family tell us we should be doing.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Yeah.
There will be ups and downs along the way. But with the right knowledge, the right mindset, and the right support, you can achieve your financial goals and create a life of abundance and security.
Okay, that's such a great note to end on. I'm feeling inspired and empowered, and I hope our listeners are too. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, your financial journey is unique, so embrace it, learn from it, and enjoy the ride. That's such a powerful message, It's about tuning out all that noise and making the choices that actually feel right for you on your own journey, right?
Exactly. And the best part, you don't have to be like some financial genius to make those smart decisions, right? It's all about taking things one step at a time, building that confidence as you go.
Okay, so we've covered the big picture stuff, goals, strategies, the whole emotional side of money. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty, the practical stuff. What are some tips our listeners can use to actually make this decision, invest, or pay down the mortgage?
Well, one of the most helpful things is to actually run the numbers.
Yeah.
Don't just guesstimate. Sit down with a calculator or a spreadsheet and really compare the potential outcomes of each option.
So how much interest would I save by paying down the mortgage versus how much I could potentially earn by investing?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say, for example, you have a $200,000 mortgage with a 5% interest rate. You could hop online and use a mortgage calculator to see how much interest you'd save by making some extra payments. Then you could use an investment calculator to kind of estimate potential returns based on different investment scenarios.
Okay, that makes sense. It kind of takes the guesswork out of it and lets you see the real impact of each choice.
Exactly. And don't forget about those taxes.
Taxes, right. Always got to keep Uncle Sam in mind. But how do they actually play into all of this?
Well, for example, mortgage interest is often tax deductible, right? Which can lower your overall tax burden. But on the other hand, investment income might be taxed differently. It all depends on, what you choose to invest in and how long you hold those investments.
So it's not as simple as just looking at the potential return on an investment. We need to think about how much of that we actually get to keep after taxes.
That's right. And a good tax advisor, they can help you with all those tricky details and make sure you're, making the most tax efficient decisions.
Okay, so we've crunched the numbers, factored in taxes. What else? Any other practical tips before we wrap things up?
One thing I always emphasize is starting small. You don't have to make a huge lump sum payment or invest your entire windfall all at once.
Okay, so it's okay to dip our toes in the water before we, jump in head first.
Exactly. You could start by making one extra mortgage payment every month or putting aside a small amount to invest regularly.
Yeah, that makes it feel a lot less intimidating. It's about those small steps, building that momentum.
Exactly. And again, there's no one right way to do this. It's all about what feels right for you and your specific situation.
This has been so incredibly helpful. I mean, we've really covered a lot of ground today, and I hope our listeners are feeling, more informed, more empowered to make this decision.
Me too. And I want to leave everyone with this. Personal finance, it shouldn't be scary. It's about taking control of your money and making those choices that really reflect what you want for your future.
It's not about being perfect or following a bunch of rules. It's about making progress, learning along the way, and, celebrating those wins.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us today as we explored all the ins and outs of, investing versus paying down the mortgage. Remember, the best investment you can make is always in yourself. Keep learning, keep growing, and create the financial future you deserve.
Until next time.